And then I would like to introduce Britney Duncan. I'm so excited that she's here. I was writing your intro a minute ago and I mentioned chickens, so I'll circle back to chickens.
Perfect, perfect.
Brittany's a double Zaya exec, and we met Brittany. Monica, I was just realizing we met her way at the very beginning. It was in Vegas, and
Mhm.
there were only about 30 of us there, so we got to know each other pretty well. Her and her husband, and we did a bar class with Brittany, and we became. I think we became friends like after that event. I feel like we've been friends the whole time, but
Yes.
um, we have just absolutely loved getting to know her and all of benefiting from all of her wisdom. But I want to tell you guys a little bit about her. She's a mom of four. She's a former nurse. She's a homeschool mom. She's a lover of chickens and gardening. We briefly discussed her talking about that on this call and then decided maybe that wouldn't be the best use of time. Her family also owns their own business, so I don't know if she'll touch on that a little bit, but she's definitely got the entrepreneur spirit. But my favorite thing about Brittany is that she is 100% Brittany, and she does that so well. I mean, she's the best Brittany there could be. Like, she just owns who she is, and she just does that really, really well. If you guys aren't following her on Instagram, it's Basics with Brit. Is that
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
Basics with Brit, and you'll see that she's talking a lot about things she loves, cooking and momming and chickens and gardening, and then this business. And she does it in such an authentic way that I think she's a really great example to all of us. So, Brittany, we're so glad that you're here, and we just can't wait to learn from you. So I will let you take it away.
Thank you, Katie. That was like a little love note just right
Hi,
there. That was a great way to start. Thank you.
you're welcome.
Okay, so I feel like she gave a pretty good like synopsis of who I am. I've been a nurse for almost 10 years. I was able to step away from nursing about a year and a half in, is kind of when I was able to step away, replace my income. And so I was able to move forward in that way. That was huge for me. I never really envisioned myself as that person. Um, Sorry, I need to drink water. I I was ICU, so I was used to people being very, very sick and coming to me. So in saying that, like I didn't have a background in indirect sales. I honestly learned how to do a Facebook party from Katie and Monica. Like they taught us all at the very beginning because we just didn't even know you could utilize the platforms. So I mean, we were clueless when we started. But like she said, my husband and I own pest control businesses, and in that we were able to, I don't mind failing. I don't even like that word, but I don't mind just falling and falling and falling and then getting back up, figuring it out. That is not a problem to me. And so when I came in, my husband, I told him I wanted to do the business, and he was like, that's fine. You're giving it 2 years though. Like you're giving it 2 solid years. And I was like, holy cow. Okay. Like I was just thinking, like, we'll see what happens in 6 months. And he was like, no, you're going to give it your all and you're going to do it. I'm like, all right. So, I mean, that was just kind of my mindset when I didn't give myself an option for opting out. It's just what it is. Like success is inevitable if you don't even give yourself the option. So I love that, that he pushed me into that. And there have been many times since that I would tell him like, oh, I just don't know if like this is cut out for me or I can fit this in, because family is always number one for me. And he will, help me just reevaluate and see like, no, like the beauty of your business. I mean, with our pest control, we have 15 employees, like we're constantly babysitting. Like it's a headache. I mean, it's great, pays the bills. It's a headache. Like my business is 1,000 times better. And I will say that to him all the time. Like I was telling him the other day, like, oh, we should go on this trip. And he's like, yeah, some of us just can't leave all the time. And I'm like, well, sucks to be you because I'm going. So that's kind of how we operate back and forth. And I'm very grateful to have that support. If I did not have that support though, if you don't have that in your spouse or your partner, you need to find that support. That's just a little soapbox from Brittany. Okay, so now let's get into, tonight we're going to talk about objections. So this is something that I love talking about because I feel like I've grown so much in discussing objections with potential reps. I think the way that I approached it initially when I came in was that I just like came in fingers crossed, please don't have any objections. Like that's really how I just came in, like, oh, I hope it's an objection I can speak to. I quickly learned 99.9999% of people have objections. So I want you to think back at your own, when you were coming into the business, what was your first objection? And just put it in the chat. your very first objection, or you can even put in the objections you hear the most from people. I know sometimes those are easier to remember. Expensive. Wanted to wait until I could afford it. Okay. I didn't want to be that girl. Oh yes, we've heard that. Time. Yeah, I didn't want to be that girl. That was a real big one for me. Suck me into the social media hole. Oh, that's a new one, Rachel. I haven't heard that from anyone else. Was that from you though? I think, or maybe that was your personal one. I like to be a shopper, not the seller. Fear of the pyramid scheme. Yes. I actually love that one, the pyramid scheme. I think just because I'm so confident about like in my response to it that I actually like kind of hope people say that just so that I can educate. Why I left another business, lack of presence. Oh, right. Okay, Rachel. Yes, I do remember that about your story now. Worried what others would think of me, cost. Okay. So generally speaking, I feel like we have 4 typical objections in our business. And those are time, money. I need to ask my husband. I hear that one quite often. And that one you kind of have to dig into, and we'll talk about that in a minute. And the last one I hear the most regular is, I'm not a salesperson. I get that one a lot. Like, I don't know if I'd be good at sales. Okay, so my first little piece to that is objection is completely normal, and we need to normalize it. We object all the time in our personal lives to things. It is our brain. Our brain wants to keep us safe. It wants to take the safe route. We don't ever want to be like the outlier sticking out, generally speaking. And so with that, just know as we are talking to people, their brain is firing off objections to them nonstop, like just objection, objection, objection. And so they're going to combat that. Now, what I want you to do is just to know, first of all, it is completely normal and we expect it. If they don't have objections, quite honestly, like it doesn't worry me, but I'm like, wait a second, I know deep down you have something. And so I really try to dig it up because I would rather speak to them about those objections than them get off the phone or get off the voice memo, whatever we're doing, and go and sit there in their own head, in their own brain, and try to like work through these objections. Because chances are after they're working through those, is it going to be a good turnout for us? Are they going to come back and be like, you know what? I worked through it. I'm good. No, most of the time they're not. Like, honestly, they'll probably ghost you. Not really. But I mean, usually the outcome is going to be a lot more hesitant, a lot more like, oh, I don't know. So knowing that they're going to be working through this with or without you, wouldn't you rather kind of hold their hand through the process? I would rather just be like, yes, no, let's discuss these. I'm going to put my notes up here. Yes, Kristen Voss, she does teach this too. Yes, just expect the objections. So first of all, we're going to expect it and normalize it. We know generally, we just kind of talked about their usual objections. So what I like to do is to formulate a response before we even get into it. Before, I just kind of know if someone is going to talk to me about time, well, let me tell you how I do that, how I work around that piece. You want to talk about the money piece? Let's talk about it. And the money one is a little bit hard for me only because when I joined, I think the kit was $900. So when people are like, oh, the $295, I'm like, oh, well, I paid triple that. You're fine. So, I mean, that's when I truly have to like be a little bit more like, all right, that is tough. It's hard to do that. And I'll tell you all my responses to these, and then you can kind of formulate your own from there. But the second thing I want you to do, as soon as someone gives you, okay, so now we know we're going to expect it. And here it comes. Like they're going to tell you, I need to talk with my husband about this. We're going to get curious. Okay, so we expected it. Now we're going to get really curious. What I mean by that is that when you dive into it and you're talking to them like, okay, so why would your husband object? Well, why do you think he would be against this? What would your answer be if he was like, absolutely, sign up tonight? What would you do? So when you're just kind of like digging a little more to find out where they're at, a lot of times the husband, I find for myself, as soon as I started like getting a little more curious and digging in, I would find that that was just their way out. They weren't sure. And so it's an easy cop out, right? Like, oh, let me talk to my husband. He can be the bad guy. I've used that. I mean, I've used that in my own life. So I know like it's a good cop out because there's not a whole lot that people can say like, well, please just talk him into it. Like, yep, no, he said no. So we need to dig and find out, is it actually the husband against it? So I was talking to a girl, and as soon as I switched from just saying like, okay, yeah, talk to him and let me know tonight, or, talk to him and I'll circle back with you tomorrow, whatever my usual response was. And so this one particular time I started digging. I was like, okay, why do you think he would say no? And she's like, oh my gosh, his sister started selling XYZ. And it's so obnoxious. Like, she is constantly texting me on the 30th of the month. Hey, do you want to order anything? I'm like, okay. But that helps me know that I can tell her, like, we do not do that. Like, I can assure you that is not how we train people. That is not something that we emphasize. So I'm able to combat that objection. I had a recent one actually like a couple hours ago where she's like, well, I'm just so nervous. Like, I'm not going to be good at sales. And I'm like, what makes you think that I came into this business good at sales? And just, and she's like, well, I don't know. You just seem so like natural at it. And I'm like, it is a skill. Like, you can get good at it. And she was a fellow nurse. So I'm like, it's just like, if I have any other nurses on here, it's like placing your first IV. The very first one, you are terrified. You're like shaking as you're holding it, and they're like, is this your first time? No, it's not at all. As you're like placing it. And then after that, you're really good at it. So it's just like, sorry, my hair's bugging me. Just like any other skill set, you can develop it. So as people come to you like, hey, I'm nervous. I am not a salesman. I'm like, cool, me either. Like, I especially did not come into it. I still don't consider myself like a stellar salesman. If I was going to go like door to door and sell knives, I don't think I'd be super effective at it. But I am effective in my own way, in my own space on social. So I combat it with that, like, right? What makes you think that? So just really getting curious about why they're thinking it. Because quite often, it's not exactly what they're saying, or you can like tell them exactly how to feel about it. And I know that kind of sounds weird, but you can guide them into realizing like, hey, you don't have to be an amazing salesman at this. Okay. So the third thing, keeping in mind just the objections, I'm just reading over my notes briefly so I'm not forgetting anything, but the objections will come now or later. I actually had a girl sign up, and this was at the very beginning when I didn't really discuss objections before. She signed up, and then after she signed up, like a day later, was like, hey, I'm going to cancel my account. I regret this. I shouldn't have done this. Then we got to dive into the objections. Had I not known how to deal with them a little bit, I think she would have just canceled immediately. But I knew like, okay, well, let's talk through this. Let's figure out what is scaring you, what's making you super nervous. Those feelings are normal. Like, I think probably every single one of us, as soon as we signed up, felt a little bit of like, should I have done that? Like, I don't know about this. You feel a little bit of that. That is normal. And I also coach people, hey, tomorrow you're going to wonder what the heck you did. Ignore it. We are going to get you rolling. Like, I just tell them what to expect. So it's not a surprise. So they're not feeling like I'm the only one. So when I have someone tell me like, I don't feel like I'll be good with sales, or I don't think I have the time, I'm like, cool. None of us feel like that. Like, none of us feel like that. So that's why. And so here's how I talk about the objections almost before they do. So if you do follow me on social, or you've watched me for any period of time, I'll do posts and stories speaking to people's objections. Hey, you don't think you have time? Cool, me either. And I tell them exactly what we do. So like in my team, our big thing is we want every person to come in to earn their kit investment back in 30 days. So if I have someone that's worried about financial, right? Like, wow, $295, that's a big investment for us right now. I don't know that we can comfortably afford that. I personally will never encourage anyone to put it on a credit card. You're an adult, you do you, but I'm never going to say like, hey, just throw that on a credit card. We're going to be good. So what I say instead is like, hey, in our team, our entire goal is to get your kit investment back in 30 days. So we have this 30-day checklist type thing that you go through, and we help you launch your business, and we help you get enough sales that at day 31, you are free and clear. You are full profit. And so as you're meeting their objection with like, well, here's the answer. We show you how to do this. And I even tell them, again, if you watch my stories, you'll see, I say, hey, last month we had 100 women on our team pay off their kit within 30 days. How amazing is that? Now, I don't know exact numbers, because you could have had someone that started like mid-February and they made, like 150 the first month and then 150 in March. But a general, we can talk about this later, but I'll go through my back office, figure out the numbers, and share that with people. Hey, day 31, I can speak to the traditional business. When we started my business, my husband came to me and I had like a 3-week-old baby, and it was during, I'm trying to think, the World Cup that they had horns. I don't know if it was like in Africa or something, but there was just horns all the time. And my husband was watching it nonstop, and I wanted to strangle him. Like, it's our first baby. I'm so tired. And I remember him coming to me and he's like, hey, I want to start a business. And I'm like, I want to kill you. So I think that you should not talk to me about this right now. We should readdress. So anyway, he did come back to me the next day after I had slept a little bit. I'm sure he was like, go take a shower, you know, go have a good cry. That's probably what I needed. But when he came back, he's like, hey, I have this business here. He gave me like a little list of everything. And he's like, okay, and I think we'll be profitable year one, like at the end of year one. And I'm like, okay. So like in the meantime, what do we do? How old was I at that time? Like 25. So I just didn't have, it was our first business. I had no knowledge that, hey, that's normal. Like brick and mortar businesses take a long time to become profitable. And luckily we had hit it a little bit before that. But in comparison, like, gosh dang, you know, that business cost us 50,000 cash startup. Here we've got 300 and we're profitable day 31. I speak to that because that's part of my story. So find what you can speak to with your people and meet these objections in your VIP groups, meet them on your Instagram, meet them in Facebook, just talking like, hey, do you feel like this is really expensive? You don't even have to say that. You could just say like, you know, the awesome thing about our team is we focus on those first 30 days with you. We walk you step by step to show you exactly what to do. And that way, subconsciously, they're like, okay, so they're going to have me, I'm going to be profitable day 31. Like that's what their brain's going to be thinking. So you're meeting those objections without them even asking. So then what would be the next objection? Oh, the time. So time is a really big one for me. So currently, just so you have an idea, I have 4 kids, 10 and under. I'm in New Mexico and we were shut down until about 2 weeks ago, like completely shut down. So I chose to pull my kids from virtual school. I could not do it. I had K, 3 and 4. So I've been homeschooling and have a 4-year-old. So my days are a little bit chaotic. I run this business, you know, I have my kids, and just, I run the church youth group. So there's just a lot of things, like a lot of balls in the air. So one thing I had to get really big on was time efficiency. And this actually came in the first like 6 months of my business. I think I remember sitting on the kitchen floor with you guys. Was that at the first summit, Katie and Monica? Okay. So we were in Salt Lake that time. So at the same time, they probably didn't even know this. My husband had just been diagnosed with severe anxiety. My husband's the most chill person on the planet. So this came out of freaking left field. Like when it happened, we were like, whoa, what is going on? So severe, he couldn't run his business. He laid in bed and struggled. I found a clinic up in Salt Lake that he could go to get help. So this very first summit that we went to, Stephen had been in this clinic for 3 weeks. So he had been there for 3 weeks. So I'd been single momming it all this time, running the pest control business, which I'd never done on my own. So that was all new. I remember I'd go to bed at like 3 a.m. and wake up at 7 and do it all over again, over and over and over. It was the worst time of my life. And Summit was an escape. That was like the best weekend because I needed that. But in that space, that dark, terrible, I boxed it away and put it in the corner. I learned how to really effectively and dig deep into what matters in a business. It's really easy to get caught up in the fluff of our business, right? To create the best graphics and to create the best stories and make sure your lighting's good. And I mean, there's just so many things to distract you. And I remember I had Post-it notes of like, you know, the things, and I still to this day focus. Your focuses are customer acquisition, customer retention, rep acquisition, and rep retention. That is it, those 4 things. So if what you're doing is not focused on that and truly income producing, it needs to slide, you know, until you have the brain space to get back in there. So when people talk to me about like, I don't have time, I'm like, hey, I feel you. I totally feel you. When I started this, I had 4 kids, 6 and under. I was working as a nurse, trying to run my husband's business, also like trying to be everything for him, right? To make sure he's not crashing. Like I totally get where you're coming from. Awesome thing. We focus on working smarter here. We do. That's like our whole intention. We teach you what matters, what doesn't, and how to move forward, you know, with all of that. And I know you guys have all of these resources. I know Katie and Monica, we've worked together with a lot of things. So you can say that with confidence. Tell them like, hey, we've got these things and we focus on what matters. We don't worry about having the best graphics or XYZ. But I really do think as a company as a whole, like we work very smart. I have a lot of friends in other companies, you know, and I don't want to say their names because they're not bad, but just like that, sometimes I'm like, that doesn't even matter. Like you should totally get rid of that. Like that is such a time suck. So coming forward with confidence in that. And now another thing that I got was someone was telling me, this was on the same phone call today. She was like, I'm not natural at social media like you are. And I was like, okay, I also know exactly what you're speaking to. In my private account, I think I posted like once a year. I mean, I was not a big social person before this at all. This is a business. So I show up, it's my brick and mortar. If I'm not showing up every day, I'm closed, and people know that. So just speaking to where they're at, and I feel like 99% of the time you can speak to them for exactly, you probably felt the exact same things they did, right? And you can speak to that with your own personal experience. I'm sure you guys have heard of the, why am I blanking? What is it? Feel, felt, found? No, something like that. Is that it? Feel, felt, found? I use different words, but generally saying the same thing. Katie, I feel you. I know exactly how you feel because I felt that same way. But I've found in our team, we focus on this. I mean, those, you don't have to use those specific words, but feel, felt, found. You're relating to them. You're saying, I know what you're saying. I know, I get it. I've got 4 kids too, and they matter most. You know, and we're really big on our team with family. Like your family always comes first. I know Katie and Monica are the same, but that is number one. I think that trickles down from the top of the company. Like we are a family-based company. And so I absolutely know that fear when you're thinking you're going to have to give up your family time. You're not. Because and let me tell you how. Here's how I worked it. Here's how another person works it. And I give them options. And that helps their brain like stop like, well, maybe I could. Because your job is to instill belief and to show them like, hey, you can do this too. That's what we are. We're like rally girls. You know, when you're going through this, you're like, no, you can do this. I promise you can. And I truly believe if I could do it, anybody could. I had no qualifications when I came into this business of, you know, running a big business. I had belief in myself though. That's one thing that I hardly ever lacked was I just knew like, okay, I've got 2 years. I'm going to do this. Like, I'm not going to waste my time. So I just went out there and did it. And I did it with consistency every single day. It wasn't 8 hours a day. It was literally 5:30 a.m. That was my jam when I started, 5:30 to 6:30. And then again, usually like 8:30 to 9:30 at night. And I'd pop in and do a live. And I mean, I'm sure Katie and Monica have heard this story. I had lives where kids would come running and like, Mom, there's poop everywhere. Like I had one, literally, there was poop everywhere. And I'm like, I gotta go. So let life happen. That is okay. But fitting this in, as long as you have that consistency, I swear you are going to get there. Okay. And then last but not least, don't forget that this is actually like my husband calls it the ask cycle. It's a cycle. So you're going to have the ask, right? And whether that's a soft ask, social media, or a direct, like you're having a conversation and you're like, hey, you know, can I give you a little more information about Zaya? Like, I think you'd be really good at it. Okay. So there's your hard ask or soft ask. Then they're most likely going to have an objection. And so you're going to meet that objection. You're going to talk to them about it. And then you got to remember, got to have the ask again. So often I feel like I meet the objection and then I'm like, just kind of like waiting for them. No. You need to ask again. So those are those times you're circling back to them. Like I just reached out to a girl. She was supposed to sign up a week ago and she just still hasn't. I don't want to be annoying about it. So I just reached out and said like, hey, just wanted to make sure you saw the kit change from the last time I had showed you. Can't wait to work with you. Like, you know, just getting creative and you're reaching back out, but you're reminding them like, hey, we're still here. And I'm sure life just happened and she's busy. I'm still confident she's going to sign up. It's just been a busy time. Going for that ask again. Okay. So then you might meet another objection with them. You know, now it might be like, well, actually, I'm really worried about the time, whatever. So you're going to meet that objection. You're going to ask again. It's truly like a cycle until they're like, literally like, Katie, leave me alone. I mean, you don't ever want that. But if they're like, you know what, this is absolutely not for me right now. Like, no, not a good time. Okay, awesome. Like, thanks so much for chatting with me, you know, blah, 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 whatever. But making sure you're circling all the way until you get that yes. We're going to just go with that. Until you get that yes, you go for it. Or the absolute no. So just remember that last little piece of the cycle. Don't get stuck on meeting the objection and just like backing away. You got to have to ask again. And I actually have a horror story about this. So I worked with a girl that, you know, I met this objection, you know, asked, met another objection. And then I just was like, okay, I feel like I can't ask again because that would have been like my third, you know, ask, like soft or hard ask. And she ended up signing up with Allie Holt because Allie had done an ask in her stories. And I straight up was like, Allie, oh my gosh, I can't. And I'm not mad at Allie. Allie and I are friends. But I was like, props to Allie. Like she gave that ask right at the right time when I had been working this girl for weeks. And Allie's like, I'm so sorry. I didn't even ask her if she was working with anyone. I'm like, it's fine. Like we all forget and I hold no hard feelings. Allie did it right. I mean, she gave the ask and I was like, oh, I did all that work and then nothing, right? And it was a disappointment. So just don't forget to ask again, because otherwise someone else will be asking their stories and they'll just sign up for them. So don't let that happen to you. Okay, so now I'm just going to open it up to if there's any questions in particular about the ask. I'm going to check the chat and see if I missed anything.
So good, Brittany. I could listen to you all day. I wrote down, you know what I wrote down? I wrote, be bold, because what this is, it is a boldness to follow up with an objection. I mean, that is, but you know what, you guys, that's the difference between being successful and not. It's just that extra little step. It makes all the difference. So I just love it. It's so confident.
I remember feeling like because I think Stephen was the one that told me to do that. He's like, meet the objections before they even do it. So just so you guys know, we did door-to-door sales with pest control. So Stephen trained all these little 20-year-old boys, going door to door. And part of their training was like, meet the objection before they even tell you. And I told him, but I don't want to like put objections in people's minds. And he's like, newsflash, like they've already thought of all of it. You're not like saying like, okay, if you're worried about time, and he's like, they're not dumb, Brittany. Like they all have brain, he's like, they think just like you. And I'm like, oh, that's so true. So if that is a fear of yours, just don't let it be, because really everyone has thought about time, money, spouse support. Like we're all thinking about it.
So good.
Yeah. And I do think if you come into it with confidence, Katie, like you were saying, just being bold, like it's almost, I don't know, like I don't want to say they trust you more, but like you seem more like an expert. Yeah.
It's like, so what? Yeah. It's like, there's a confidence, and people are attracted to confidence.
Confidence is sexy. Yes.
Yeah.
Totally. Okay.
I love saying that as I'm in my slippers, no bra.
I'm like, well, I probably have chicken poop on my feet. So.
Okay. People are loving your story.
Okay, does anyone have questions?
Yes, so good.
I know I got to see Monica twice today. We're in a mastermind together.
What else did I write down? I love when you said coach them into how they will feel like after they join. I've never done that before, and that's really smart, because I'm sure 90% of people do feel like scared or regret or like, oh God, I feel out of place. And if you just coach them on that ahead of time, I think that's really, really smart.
Yeah. And I usually I'm like, you might feel like you totally regret this tomorrow. I remember that feeling. Don't worry, your clothes will be there in 2 days and all of that will disappear.
Everything will be great in the world. What's your Instagram handle? Basics?
Oh, I'll type it in. It's just Basics with Brit. I'm debating if I just need to change it to my name, but
okay, I feel like you should.
I know. So it's my personal. I have Britney Duncan. I'm here, you guys.
I know. I found you, and I'm like, wait, this girl doesn't post anything. This isn't the right one.
Yeah, that's me. I haven't posted since I started Zaya. I'm scared if I give it up, someone else will like get it in the meantime. That's what I'm scared of. I know that's so cheesy, but that is totally. Yes.
Your social media is, I think I've told you this, but it is so on point right now. I find myself like just watching and and I've thought like, if I didn't have an upline, I would sign with this girl. Like you just attract, I think you attract what you put out, and it's just, it's so good.
Well, and I did I'll share a small win with you guys. I had a girl approach me that she's like this huge, she's built 3 multi-million-dollar businesses, and she just approached me and was like, I just like your confidence. So I want to sign up with you. I'm like, oh my gosh, so what do you want to teach me? Because I feel like she's here and I'm like here. But that all just came truly, I think finding my voice on social has helped a lot. I just feel very confident in, talking about my chickens. You know what? I found my people. People that follow me, they like my chickens, and they'll they'll ask about them, or my tulips. You guys will see me out there counting my tulips. I am a nerd, but I found my people. So I do feel like when you know who you're talking to, it's just so much easier.
And what a glorious life that you've built, where you can talk about chickens and make all this money.
Yes, I know. And it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't connect. It's not like, hey, you need these leggings so you can take care of your chickens. I'll do funny stuff that correlates, but it's like a happy place. And I want that for everyone. That's
such a great reminder that it doesn't have to relate. Your 4 pillars or however many pillars you have, they don't have to relate to activewear. I think a lot of times we're trying to tie it back. That's such a good reminder.
Right. And I do food, which I mean can kind of correlate to like health, but you'll see it's not health food. It's just
Just
it's normal family. I try to keep it healthy, but it's just normal family food.
you do good.
Yes.
Anybody,
Okay.
anybody else? Any other questions? I just love hearing your story and how you've worked through some of your challenges, and I'm sure everybody feels the way that I'm feeling, which is like it's just so inspiring to see someone so successful talk about that really smart time management too, because that's what everybody I think is really ultimately going for, is to be able to be really successful without working crazy hours. So that's
Right.
inspiring.
Yeah. Well, and to be honest, I mean, that's what we preach. Like, hey, this business brings you time freedom. Like, if we're not practicing that, we're just a bunch of liars. So I really do. I kept track of my hours for 2 weeks. Monica, were you on the time management call we did? I can't remember. I don't think you were, but someone's like, there's no way you only I spend 10, 15 tops a week is working. And there's no way. So I literally had notes in my phone that I kept track, and it wasn't that. But I think as long as you're focusing on what matters, and to me, I mean, you'll see I have like Post-its everywhere reminding me like this is what matters. So yep.
Bible.
Yes, yeah.
Melanie did a call for us about this, not about objections, but about time management. And I mean, it's very, you can see a trend. It's like success leaves clues. Like if you can be ultra focused on your list, you don't have to work crazy hours. And that's the key, knowing the important things and the things that you can leave off.
Yes. Well, and it's so easy to avoid. I don't know why, like fun stuff is like listening to the podcast and personal, like I love that stuff. So I do it at the beginning, like for 2.5 hours a day. I'm like, I worked so hard today when I didn't. Like there was no action. It was just all like, intake. So until I actually did action. And that's why I had to have the reminders, like you can do this, but you can't listen to that podcast until you get this done.
Yes. Remind everybody, I didn't write these down because you said them real fast. What were the 4 things that we need to focus on?
Yes. So the first one is just expect objections, right?
No, not that. I mean, customer retention, those.
Customer acquisition.
Acquisition.
And then customer retention.
Okay.
And then rep, if you're wanting to build. Rep acquisition.
Okay.
Yep. And rep retention.
Yeah. Brilliant. I get it.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Good.
So that just kind of helps me categorize.
Yes. That would be a good way to do buckets of your week. So rep, retention is connecting with your team. Rep acquisition is reach outs and social media planning around that. You guys see, so you could do buckets for the week. That would be really good. Do you do buckets, Brittany?
Loosely, I never called them buckets. I'm really big on time blocking. So I just kind of knew like Mondays were for customers, Tuesdays was for team. Like that's kind of how my brain works.
Okay.
So that's what like Monday is my follow-ups for all my customers. And then, I'm not really good at reaching out. Allie's amazing at it. Like she'll know, oh, all these people that ordered bomber bras, I'm going to just send them a quick little note about this other bomber bra. I want to start doing that. I just haven't yet, but yeah. So buckets in a different way, I guess, is how I work.
Okay, so good. Well, thank you so much for giving us your time. I know family time is important and we appreciate you.
Yes, thank you for having me, you guys.
I will post the recording tomorrow, guys. Oh, sorry, Monica. Sorry, what'd you say?
I just said good night, Britt. Thank you so much.
Okay, bye, guys.
Bye, guys. Thank you.